Hello, everyone, and welcome to the finals of the NASPA Tournament of Champions presented by Scrabble GO. I'm expert player Morris Greenberg, and I'm here with my co-commentator, expert Josh Sokol. How are you doing today, Josh?
I'm pumped. I hope everyone in the chat is pumped as well. This is going to be an awesome finals.
So we started off with 8, and now we're down to 2. We lost a Canadian champion. We lost a school Scrabble champion. We even lost a Jeopardy champion. But now we're just left with Austin Shin and Cecilia Lee, who have played excellently this tournament. Josh, how have you felt about their games so far?
I mean, identically, basically, they both swept their first match, if I remember correctly, 3-0, and they both went 4-1 against their semifinals competitors. So I have no idea what's going to happen this time, but it's one person has to win, so we'll see.
Let's go to the players to kick off game 1. As a reminder, it's a best 4 of 7 today, so we're going to play 2 games, then a break, and then we'll continue on thereafter. But we will see if this ends in a 4-game sweep for someone, or goes all the way to 7 games, or somewhere in between. And we are off. So we see Austin has ACFILNT. Josh, there's a lot of good bingo tiles in here. The F kind of slows you down a bit. What do you try to do on a play like this?
I mean, you might have a bingo here, so I'm sort of looking for that first. But then, yeah, I think the first thing that springs to mind is the play he's putting down on the board, Finca. That's a really nice word. Scores 28 points. Leaves 2 nice letters on his rack, and I think that's definitely the right approach here. He could also play Caliph, as suggested, which keeps a slightly better NT combination, but that will also create more opportunities for Cecilia, since he's putting that C on the center square, and that A right next to it will be exposed to one of those double letters. Whereas here, Finca is a more defensive play, and I definitely prefer it to Caliph.
Yeah, there are a few interesting options there. Clift was also in play, but all seem pretty reasonable. So he plays that, and Cecilia has really good bingo tiles right away. So yeah. She's holding ACEINOT. What's jumping out at you, Josh, right now?
I think we're going to see a very early bingo from Cecilia. First turn bingos are always really great to have. I'm seeing something through the N. I don't know if any of the viewers see that. There might also be something else, but she's going to look through all of her options, and she's going to find what she thinks is the best play, and we'll see what she does.
Yeah, so for the viewers not familiar, this produces a 7-letter word, aconite. I believe there's a bingo through the C as well. Is acetonic, I think, is valid, and I think Josh was probably seeing in action. So all 3 of those could come down. And if you're looking at the screen now, you'll see these suggested plays. That is by our computer engine, Quackle. And actually, one of the creators of Quackle is Cecilia's husband, John O'Laughlin. He is also a software developer or engineer at Google. So he has Scrabble experience. He has computing experience. He's kind of the best of both worlds to create this sort of AI. And so this algorithm, or this AI, we're going to start by showing you the top rated plays in a predetermined way. That's going to be based on the score and how valuable are the tiles you leave. In this case, since these are all bingos, it's just going to be based on the score because you're not keeping any tiles. But throughout this game, we might simulate plays based on how the board is shaped, just because Scrabble can unfold in so many different ways, and simulating an actual game based on what's actually developed may differ a lot from our predetermined algorithms. So it looks like Cecilia is going to play Aconite now for 65 points. Now, it definitely is a bit risky of a spot. Josh, what sort of things here would you be worried about with playing Aconite in this spot?
Well, the first thing I'm worried about is that spot under the I in Aconite. Austin could come down if he has an F or a D tile. He could come down very nicely on that triple word to the right of the board. The second thing I'm worried about is the S hook on Aconite. Aconite is a noun, takes an S, and if Austin has an S, he might be able to score very, very well. There wasn't really a great way in this position to prevent these sort of scenarios from happening. Sometimes when you have a bingo, you just have to play it and just hope your opponent doesn't come back with something just as good or better.
Yeah, and so Josh mentioned the word hook there. We're going to be saying hook a lot. That just means placing one tile before or after a specific word, and the advantage of that is you can go in the other direction and get the points of that word and the word you're playing. So aconite does take a back hook of an S, so aconites is a word. It also takes a front hook of a T, so taconite is a word. And so maybe if you get a T and an H, you can make a TCH word in this game. We'll see if that unfolds.
Oh yeah, that'd be really, really cool.
Yeah,
so now we're back to Austin here. What are you seeing here, Morris? He doesn't have that nice of a rack here, I would say.
Yeah, so I'd probably be looking to get rid of the G. As we've mentioned in the past few matches on this broadcast, we're both not the biggest fans of the G. So a play like Got, which the engine is suggesting, is a pretty good idea. Now, the one thing I'd be looking at, and so that's Got, it makes 3 two-letter words. It would make Go, On, and TI. But it looks like he's choosing Tola instead, which is a more it more directly addresses the most scary spot on the board. That triple word score is super scary, especially if Cecilia has a tile like an F, because if is a word, and then the F will be doubled and then tripled because it's on a double letter score and a triple word score, so that would be times 6. And then you also get the points for the double letter score in the other direction, making the 2-letter word if. So the F alone would be times 8. And so if you have a 4-letter point value, a 4-point tile times 8, that's 32 already, and you get more stuff too. That's cause for concern. So I completely understand Austin's approach here of wanting to shut down the key spot. I might slightly prefer Got, but it's pretty close.
Yeah, it's definitely the more human approach is to want to cover those spots that we mentioned, and there's not much of a difference between plays. I think scoring the extra points is definitely Austin's MO here, and yeah, we like this play. So let's go back to Cecilia.
Yeah, so she's hasn't gotten quite that synergistic of a pull right away after playing all 7 tiles. That often happens when you draw 7 random tiles. You're not keeping anything that goes together nicely, so there's more randomness involved. I like this idea she's doing, though. She's going to keep some of the more synergistic tiles like the INS and score a bunch with the B and D. Now she's choosing between Bud and Bid here. Normally, I would prefer not keeping 2 I's, even though the U is a worse tile alone than the I. 2 I's is worse than IU, in my opinion, at least. One thing she might be noticing is there have been no U's played, whereas there's already been 2 I's played, though, so it makes it much less likely she'll draw a 3rd I. Josh, do you prefer Bud there, or Bid, or something else?
I do prefer Bud, and what you said is definitely true. II versus IU. I mean, not a great choice to choose from. But I think the other thing that Bud does that Bid does not do is that, as you can see, the UN is right below a double word score. And if Austin were to have a Z or many other tiles after IN, he would be able to score a lot more points, making an overlapping play. So if he, for example, now has a J, he can play JAR and JUN and ADIT. Those are all valid words. So that's sort of a bad case scenario you're thinking about when you're making a play like Bud or Bid. And I think that Bid is a slightly more dangerous option because there are more tiles, more higher scoring tiles that go above the IN. Let's talk about the time here. Cecilia's been playing faster than Austin. You can see the clocks in the bottom corners of the webcams. They start with 20 minutes. Normally in regular tournaments, it's 25 minutes apiece. And we see Austin exchanging his cue in a lot of the bad tiles he has on his rack. I think that's a very good option.
Yeah, and he picked up bingos, so it looks like he's going to bingo. I'm going to be looking first through the I and Finca. He'll have things like angriest or rangiest, but it looks like Cecilia is going to close off that spot a bit. So he'll look to see if he can The reason why that I is super valuable is because it was hit 2 double word scores. That would be times 4, and so that would be worth a lot of points. But it looks like Cecilia is going to block that for now. She just picked it back up, so maybe she's considering other things. I guess if you're Cecilia here, what would be your objectives?
So she's ahead by 43 now. It's a nice healthy margin, and she has those 2 S's, which are really great. So she might want to use one of them to score well here. We're seeing a suggestion of Finks from the F in Finca. That would make a nice similar sounding 2 plays with that F. But you might also try to just keep both S's and hope for better options in the future. And that's what she's doing here. She's playing this really cool word of Kinnin, keeping both S's. Austin immediately tries Kinine to see if that's a valid word here, which it isn't. But yeah, I really do like that option, keeping both S's as firepower for the next turn.
Yeah, and so one thing that Josh just mentioned as a side comment there is Austin immediately tried an E to see if Kinine is a word. So you'll see on this, so normally in tournaments, we don't have some sort of checker in advance if the word we're going to play is actually a word. We play it, and then if someone doesn't think it's a word and they're right, we actually have to take the word off and lose our turn. In Scrabble Go, they just don't allow invalid words, or phony words is often what we call it. So you'll see players in this tournament just plop a letter down just to check if something's a word. So you can see in green, that's a valid word. Anything in red is invalid. So Austin's going to play Kinnins and Strange now, but he wanted to check first if Kinine was a word, probably to see if there was some way to hit both double word scores.
Or just make maybe, because there are lots of 7-letter words in this rack. I can see Argents, Strange. There's a lot of them. I don't want to go through all of them, but Garnets and stuff. If he was able to play Kinine, he would be able to make a less volatile play, a less dangerous play. But now he's playing Strange. Strange can be hooked. We're talking about hooks with an E. Estrange is a word. We all know this word. It can be hooked the other way with a D, an R, an S. And he's creating all sorts of opportunities that he might have been able to not create if Kinine was a word.
I don't think strange is a word. I don't think the D is. So it looks like we can check now. So Cecilia
She just corrects me. She can't hear me, by the way. But thanks a lot for that correction. I think I was thinking of stringed instead. Excuse me.
Yeah, we do that all the time. If you've tuned into this set of matches for the past 7 days, I've made plenty of faux pas of word knowledge. So, but yeah, so Cecilia here, she's slightly behind, but after most plays here, she'll take a slight lead. I guess you're probably looking at getting rid of the V here, Josh. What else are you trying to do on this sort of turn?
Well, I only have one vowel here, so if there's a play that looks pretty good that keeps that one vowel, I would be happy with it, because I try not to leave myself with just consonants or just vowels when I can help it. So I might be looking at something like veld, V-E-L-D, through the E in Strange. That's 14 points. It's not that many points. You can score more points here. But I would be thinking about that, because it's really better when you can to keep a vowel, just in case you run into some trouble.
Oh, but Cecilia's looking at something completely different. So we saw this in the past with Cecilia. She loves to do these sorts of setups aggressively with her S. We saw it in her first match. She played a hag one row before the triple lane at the bottom when she was holding an S, and it really benefited her. She got a bingo of invets from that. And it looks like she's considering Sild and Stranges, because she has 2 S's right now. Do you like that idea, Josh, or do you think it's a bit too early to try those sorts of things?
I mean, anytime you have 2 S's, you really, really want to play one of them and set the other one up, just as your opponent will probably figure out what you're doing most of the time if you're already playing an S for such a small score, since the S is such a valuable tile. But by doing that, she sort of puts Austin in a limbo of like, oh, should I try to block what she's setting up? Because most of the time he's not going to be able to use that setup. There are only 4 S's in the game. 1 has already been played. 2 are on Cecilia's rack. It's really early in the game, so it's very unlikely Austin will be able to utilize a setup. But she decides to play Veld, and I think that's probably a bit preferred here.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting idea here, and it's really cool that we can see the players actually think about these sorts of decisions. And Austin immediately sees Berg, which is probably his best play, using one of those 2 front hooks to dit. Dit takes a front A and E. So he plays down Berg, and you also saw him check to make sure that Veld does take a back hook of a T. So the T can be a really valuable tile here all of a sudden. If you can use the T or an S after Veld, that's probably the juiciest spot for bingos right now. And so Cecilia is going to play one of her S's here because Finds is just so many points to take a more comfortable lead. But she will definitely want an S or T if that Veld line stays open.
Yeah, Finds is by far the best play here. Not much else to think about. 41 points, keeping an S, taking the lead again. I want to say nice find, but, you know, puns are puns.
Yeah. So meanwhile, Austin could play Tax off of the T back hook to Veld here. I'm looking to see if there's any other X plays. Josh, what's jumping out at you?
Yeah, the X it scores 8 points. You can sometimes score 50 points with it, but in this position, it's more of an issue than a benefit here. He might want to keep it for another turn because there is a spot next to Finds if he could play EX, XI, and EF, OX, XI, and OF, stuff like that. Even XI, XI, IN. He doesn't have any of those other vowels, but if he decides to play tram, which is being suggested right now by the engine, and that would hook the T onto Veld, that's 21 points. You're keeping your X, and you're hoping next turn you're going to get something to be able to score 40 points with.
Yeah, and one other issue with Tax in the same spot is Tax can take a back hook of an A or an I, which is super risky, and you can underlap it with XI or XU. X is a really flexible power tile. A power tile we consider 8 points or above, but it's really flexible for short words because every single vowel pairs with it for a 2-letter word. There's ax, there's X, there's XI, there's ox, and there's XU. So I love this idea of tram. It even could potentially give him another spot for the X if he draws an I or a U. He can play ax and MI or MU underneath tram. So that would be really cool. I think tram is a really standout idea. And one other thing to say about this is Austin looks like he's now moving his letters closer and closer to tram, is that we were simulating this play. So you'll see in the output at the bottom here of the generated plays that there's this win percentage in the 4th column there. And that is changing right now because we are actually iterating through potential future turns. So we can see how much higher tram is simulating than Tax for all the reasons we just stated. And so for interesting positions like this, we will try to simulate. I mean, it will depend on how fast these players play, just because you won't be able to simulate as many turns or as many iterations or games, essentially. So it looks like, though, he's found tram here, and we approve, the engine approves. That's a pretty good sign if all of us align in that way.
Yeah, we really like this play. And Cecilia, she's drawn a blank, which is really the tile you always want to see in a game. No matter where you are, if you're losing, if you're winning, the blank is just the best tile in the game, bar none. And so the first thing you want to look at here is if you have 7-letter word or an 8-letter word. But Cecilia has been thinking on Austin's time. She's already noticed that she can't find a bingo. And the best thing for her to do here is just score. And she uses her second S. As we saw with Veld, it really paid off very nicely to keep both of those S's. She just scored 41 for one, 47 for another. She plays Ruse. I think that's how you're supposed to pronounce that. I think it's a Dutch word. And Austin drew the I that he wanted. He's going to be able to score. Just how much is that? It's more than 47, right? Just with 2 tiles, 48 points. That's how valuable the X is. Now back to Cecilia.
Yeah, and so we've been trading blows, essentially. It's like a great boxing match. Cecilia takes the lead. by scoring 30 or 40, then Austin counteracts by scoring around the same amount of points. I mean, matching 47 points for something like Rouse is hard to do. And Austin said, okay, hold my beer. I'll do one more point. So now Cecilia does have the blank still, which is the most flexible tile in the game. It's been estimated the blank is worth approximately 25 or 26 points instead of the 0 points in actual point value it's worth, just because it provides so much flexibility. But here she won't be able to use it very well, just because the real value of the blank is being able to make bingos, or basically using all your tiles and getting a 50-point bonus. So as you see, the engine is recommending just playing off 2 vowels, keeping her 1 consonant, 3 more vowels in the blank. It's usually a good idea to do that sort of thing. The other thing I'd look for here with that sort of play is, what can I open? Because I'm committing to the strategy of going for bingos, I want to make sure there's actually a good shot of that happening. But Estrange is just such a good play. It scores so much that even though this doesn't open that much for her, she might just play it anyways. I guess, Josh, would you play OE in Estrange, as she already laid down once and the engine is suggesting, or would you try to do something to open the board more?
I would play it in a heartbeat, Morris. And just because it scores 24 points, it's a close game. I don't need a bingo now. I don't need a bingo next turn. I have the blank. I can just keep coasting and see if Austin opens something for me. If I want to open something later, that's totally fine. I would take the lead with OE and just see what happens next.
Yeah, so she might be considering an opening play too now, but it looks like she's going back to the spot. So she seems satisfied with this play, and I think it's thumbs up all around from all of us. So I don't think there's been a single mistake yet in this game. I think we've liked every single play these players have made, and the engine has too. So, which is really a good sign of top-level Scrabble.
I mean, this is the Tournament of Champions, Morris. These people aren't pushovers. All right, so Austin, he has the QU combo. He's going to use it. He only has the Q and the U, so luckily he's able to play through that A on the board. I was thinking of an interesting option of Grat in that same spot, using the 3 other tiles on his rack, because if Austin were to have drawn an A, he would have had the play of Quag right next to Fines, making QIUNAD. But in this position, I think it's not worth that risk of not drawing that humongous play, and thumbs up from me.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's worth it to hold the Q, especially with the U. Actually, that's usually the only time it's good to hold the Q. But yeah, sometimes the scenario that is your best case scenario that you're going for is rare enough that's just not worth it. If you can look, there's already been a lot of A's played on the board. I think there's been 5 of the 9 A's. So if you're saying, I like this play because 4 of the tiles of like the 50 some in the bag are the tile I want, it's not a good sign probabilistically. So he's considering it, or has he played it yet? Or
he's already played it. It's back to Cecilia. They've both used over 10 minutes now. That's a sign that the game is already halfway over. And she has 1 playable bingo here. And if she finds this, that would be insane. We just saw Austin play off the Q. If she makes her blank a Q, she can play Quinoline to that N in Fines, and that would just be a fantastic play. You're almost never thinking of making your blank a Q, especially with such limited time on your hands. What are you thinking, Morris? You think she's going to find it?
I don't know. It's a tough one. I don't think I would have found it, to be honest. So, and one other thing I'm looking at here is the contents of the bag. So I misspoke last turn. There is less than half the bag left. So if you see the set of tiles to the right of Cecilia's kind of picture and clock, you can actually see what tiles remain.
Oh my God, look at all those E's. Sorry. Oh my God.
Yeah, there's a ton of E's. She's holding 2 I's, but there's only 1 more I left, so she's unlikely to draw another one. So the good thing here is if she doesn't see the bingo, playing something like OI off of the K and Kinnins, which sets up some front hooks like the P, the K, I guess, which has already been played, and the M. That will make it so she's unlikely to draw the vowel she doesn't want to draw. And if she draws an E, it actually pairs pretty well with INLU or something. So it looks like she's actually going to play a higher scoring play of Idle. It's a great idea. It's a close game. You don't need to go for broke for a bingo, as Josh was sort of saying. And she'll likely draw better tiles this coming turn and then can worry about board dynamics if she can't get a bingo down with those tiles. And you can see she just draw 2 of the E's that were in the bag there that we noticed. So she has a 7-letter word of Eugenia, which I don't think plays right now, but we'll see if Austin gives her that opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, Austin, he's still struggling with the tiles he's drawing, but he's been able to make plays every turn. I think the play of XI kept like GRRTT or something.
Yeah.
And he drew the QU, so he was able to play that for a nice score. Now he's drawn the J with not too many places to play it in, but he's considering just dropping it. I mean, that's the maximum score he can achieve here, and it is a close game. The leave of Turgid isn't amazing, but it could work out for him. And I mean, these players are just trading blows here. There's not much to do left on this board, and just playing JO seems pretty good here.
Yeah, and so commenting on the board shape, so one thing I like to do in these sorts of positions is actually analyze the board shape in a few ways. One is see how compact things are. So I noticed in this case, for instance, most of the letters that have been played are all in this conduce space in the kind of bottom right triangle of the board. If you split the triangle in half diagonally, you can see that there are very few plays in the upper left triangle and a ton in the bottom right triangle, which goes to show you there usually isn't a lot of space amongst the words that you've already played. However, that is the consequence of if anyone makes a play in that upper left triangle, there's going to be a ton of space to play with. So you can sort of look at the geometry of existing spots, but you can also look, okay, let's say someone makes a play like ending in an O, because okay is a word. So if they play something like, I don't know, Lino or something, that gives a ton of potential spots for 7s or 8s. And you can analyze that quickly by seeing the amount of contiguous empty squares. And if there are 7 or more contiguous empty squares, or maybe 7 combined across one letter to make an 8-letter word, that means you're pretty likely to be able to have space for bingos.
Yeah, and right now that's not the case, and both players are deciding to keep things as they are. We'll see if one of the players gives up on that. I mean, Austin could have played DJIN to that N in fines to open stuff up, but that would have given Cecilia a spot for her rack now. So I think this play of JO is a very heads up decision by Austin. No matter what the opponent has, it's up to them now to decide what they're going to do to this board, because things are getting tighter and tighter.
Yeah, and so one thing I disliked actually about that play of JO is, from Austin's perspective, there were still 2 blanks unseen. And now that the bag is dwindling, you actually want to start thinking about turnover, just because it increases your odds of drawing the best tile in the game, or one of the best 2 tiles.
What's turnover, Morris?
Yeah, so turnover. yeah, good question, Josh. Thank you. So turnover just means like getting rid of tile, right? Using more tiles to see more tiles. If you turn over more tiles by playing more tiles, you will also be able to pick more tiles out of the bag. So turnover just means quickly using a bunch of tiles. A play like Joe is low turnover because you're only going to be drawing 1 new tile.
Mm-hmm. So that's definitely true. Yeah, those blanks are very, very important. Whether or not they're being used for bingo, we might see things compact even further if neither player is willing to make an opening. Cecilia could just play EAU next to fines and Bergs, making EF, AI, and UN. That would further restrict the board. We might just see nobody willing to make an opening for their opponent here, and those blanks will then come in handy not for bingo, but for scoring, because they can be any tile. You can put them anywhere on the board that makes a word. And yeah, you can just use them in very tight positions such as these to score more points than your opponent.
Yeah, and so it's difficult. I mean, I often like to think of my turn in terms of a 3-turn sequence. I like to think one, how many points does this turn score? Two, what does it give my opponent? How much more can they score or less can they score by me making this play? And three, how does it improve my score for next turn? AKA, what letters am I keeping so that I can be conducive to scoring next turn? So she plays Qua, kind of continuing that whole not opening strategy, but she did pick up IES, which is important because off of the T in Quart, IEST is a super common ending. So she could play a bingo like Neediest next turn if Austin doesn't block there. So that was a really important pull for Cecilia. That S really came in a key time for her. If she plays a bingo like Neediest, it actually really doesn't open the board that much while giving her a pretty comfortable lead and getting good turnover because she'll be playing off all 7 of her tiles. It's really kind of the best case scenario draw for her there.
Yeah, Neediest is it's definitely needy. It's not needy, but she needs something like this.
Yeah.
Excuse me. But it looks like Austin might decide to block that T. I mean, he doesn't have that many options here. As we continue to say, this board does not have many options. And he might just play something like Guilt. He sees there are lots of E's to come. He wants to play some more tiles off and keep TRD, which is a very good leave if you draw some vowels. So that might be a very needed block of Neediest.
Yeah, so it's interesting because we haven't seen Austin play this way really in this tournament at all. We've seen him favor scoring over defense for most of it, but in this sort of position, that one spot is so much more dangerous than everything else. And when it's a neck and neck game, you're going to lose most of the time if your opponent has something in that spot. So if you don't have much anywhere, you're okay sacrificing some points just to minimize the risk. So it's a really interesting play that we haven't really seen Austin make this turn, but I think it's coming now at a very opportune time. And we'll see how it plays out for him. I mean, there's so many E's from his perspective and didn't even pick up one. Man, that hurts. I think he was really hoping for an E there, although he did pick up a P and an H, which both go underneath the U, making up or so he could play something like dropped next turn if Cecilia doesn't go there. One other thing to mention about Austin's sort of decision-making there is he probably inferred from Cecilia's last play that she was close to something. When you just play 2 tiles like a U and an A, it really kind of sends alarm bells to your opponent that you're getting close enough to something that you're okay only taking 12 or 13 points just because the next turn you're looking good for a bingo. So it's something to monitor here, how players kind of infer what their opponent could be having or what strategy their opponent is trying to play out in making their decisions. So I think Austin did that really well here. And Cecilia is kind of going to telegraph her hand again in that way by playing 2 more tiles that are both 1-pointers and both vowels.
Yeah, it's sort of like saying, hey, you wanted these E's? Sorry, I'm not giving them to you, you know? If only she knew that Austin was so desperate for those.
Yeah, so I'm guessing now that Cecilia played, that actually makes dropped an even easier play for Austin. That would be dropped directly below Guilt, making G-O-U-P and IT. Are you looking at anything else here, Josh, or would that sort of be your go-to play?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great option. I would be looking a little bit more. She just played Phi, and I now have the P hook for Peon. Eon's on the board, so I might be looking for something making Peon. But I think under Guilt is how you're going to score the most points. But I'm not too thrilled about opening up that bottom row, that bottom triple row.
Yeah, that's why I suggested dropped, just because it's harder to underlap that than the play Austin put down of POH. Dropped scores a bit less, I think, just because it's tripling a P, which is 1 point less than an H. But yeah, there's a lot of, since P takes a back hook of A, E, I, and O, if you have any 4-letter word, or most 4-letter words ending in a vowel, will go there. And you can even do a lot of 5s just because GO takes things like an S, a D, and an R. So if you have like an ED word, a past tense word like that, it can go down. So, it looks like So the engine sees Typhon, which would play to the N in fines. Now that is really risky for Austin because he's seen Cecilia's past 2 turns and probably knows I don't want to do that kind of opening for her to give her bingos. So it looks like he's thinking about drop. Maybe he'll change to dropped. I think either could be fine here. Let's look at the vowel to consonant ratio in the bag. That would be something I would be considering here. So you see 22 unseen. That means there are 15 in the bag. The 22 unseen are the 7 he doesn't know on Cecilia's rack and the 15 in the bag. And you can actually see on his individual game screen, it said 15 tiles in the bag. So that confirms our math is right. But we can see, so there's still 6 E's unseen to him, 3 A's, 2 O's, and an I also. So that would be, that's a lot of vowels. That's 12 vowels out of 22 unseen. And the blanks could be considered a vowel or a consonant. Interesting. Austin's electing for fought here, which wouldn't open the triple lane at all. I don't know, Josh, do you prefer that or would you prefer a play like drop or drop?
I definitely prefer, like I said, I definitely prefer playing in that spot because it just prevents those really bad scenarios of Cecilia. And you can see she drew a Y and she drew a Z. So obviously when she's playing something like Phi, you're probably thinking, oh, she doesn't have much stuff to score with, but she's just drawn 2 tiles. So she might just have a really killer move on that triple lane. So I think playing something like fought is a lot safer. I don't know if it's better, but I think it's a lot more of a human approach. And I definitely agree with the thought process behind it.
So she could play Yes here, you see as an option. One other thing I might even consider here, I mean, it's kind of out of left field, but would you consider burning the blank and playing Zinky through the K in Kittens?
So Zinky, Zincky, would score 41 points. I don't think it's worth it over the 37 points
that's fair.
for Yes. And the thing about Yes that's so powerful, this is like a really, really horrible thing for for Austin, is that you can't put a letter in front of Yo, you can't put a letter in front of the Z, so there's no risk whatsoever for Cecilia playing.
Austin could just Oyez is a word, so Oyez takes a front hook of an O, so it could lead to a sort of crazy spot, but she is holding an S and an N, which both go before OH. NOH and SOH are both words, so I think that makes sense. But if I didn't have a front hook to OH, I would have to consider that a bit more, just because Austin could have created a really dangerous lane this turn.
So I was just saying there's nothing immediate. I mean, you're right, Morris, that this could happen down the line. Which might be a drawback of playing Yes, but immediately she's not giving anything back to Austin, which a play like fought, when you're normally thinking, oh, maybe if my opponent plays next to it, well, then I'll get an opportunity. But she had just the perfect play there. And now Austin plays his H that he redrew, which is a really timely draw for him because now he's able to score 31 again. But now Cecilia finally is able to strike. And this is
this is an interesting position. So she needs to think about a lot here because there are 5 tiles in the bag. So if she makes a play here, and Austin also has a bit, so if she plays all her letters here, she will empty the bag. So if Austin has a response bingo, she would lose. So she plays it right away, though, not even concerned about things, and that's really
look at the time. She only had a minute and a half left.
But she could have lost that game if Austin drew the blank last turn instead of 3 vowels. It could be a different story we're seeing right now. But
it's true. It just came down to this. You're absolutely right, Morris. But it looks like she's going to take game 1. Austin's going to be able to score nicely with his play of Airy, but Cecilia has just too much firepower with that second blank, the P and the W. She's going to be able to go out or even just score very nicely and win this game 1. So what an interesting start.
Yeah, I mean, it was such a neck and neck game. The blanks came so late in the game. It's really hard to take a lot away from that, except they both were making really high quality plays and both showed kind of an admirable level of stubbornness to not give in and open the board there. They were both patient, and Cecilia got the tiles she needed. Austin didn't, but they both exercised a lot of caution and a lot of just, impressive stubbornness. I don't know. That's what I take away from it.
Yeah, no, definitely. These boards, it's always just like, okay, what do I do? Do I open now? I mean, it's still close. I don't know. Like, are my letters good? Do I think my opponent has something? Like, it's just a very, very, very tactical game. And I'm really glad we got to witness this, because there's just so much interesting stuff to think about here.
Yeah, so it looks like Cecilia is finding an outplay of, I never know how to pronounce this, but Watape.
Yeah, that's how I would pronounce it.
So she's going to use a blank T, and that will end the game. And Cecilia takes a 1-0 lead in this finals match. And Austin even claps for her, you see. So they're both very good sports here. We saw players throughout this doing like a virtual handshake. And don't worry, they're all within 6 feet, or not within, at least 6 feet from each other. But
that was a slip there.
Yeah. But we're going to be back almost immediately for game 2.